Okay, this is book of the month number, I think 6 at this point. So we've been doing 6 months of these book of the months, which is really nice. The team has been reading The Power of Now. I hear echo. I think that's Leslie.
I think that's Leslie.
Thank you. So we've been reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That was our January book. So the team has been reading that. We've submitted book reports as per the usual. So we're going to have our monthly discussion, starting off with overall sentiment about the book, what we liked, what we didn't like, and go from there. So if anyone wants to chime in about their thoughts on the book, that would be awesome.
I guess I have one positive note. If you want to start on a positive,
start on a positive.
Actually, this might just be a positive for me, but we'll find out. I kind of like the overall structure of like the author explaining a certain concept and then having the outsider's perspective. Like I did actually quite like that he was being challenged to a certain degree. Obviously, like it's still written by him, but I did like that because a lot of the times that outside perspective kind of resonated with how I was feeling about his concept. So it was kind of nice to go a bit deeper rather than just getting, all this information thrown at you. So I like that.
I agree. At the beginning, I was like, oh, this is cool. Question and answer. It's like, it's a different perspective from like a book. I haven't read a book that did it that way. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then it started to get really frustrating because the questions that they were asking is not what I would have asked. I'd be like challenging it so much more. It felt like after a while, it was just getting super contrived. It's like, basically it was just like setting up a softball question so that you can answer it. And it just like was just infuriating sometimes.
And then there was a bit of a condescending kind of tone.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the book came out in 97, right? So it's kind of dated at this point. Yeah. So it's quite a bit older. And it was like one of those first spiritual books that was like mainstream, I guess.
It's interesting actually, Khalil, because a lot of the books we've been reading have had that kind of, they're books that are like considered to be classics. We've read some classics from the marketing world. And I love the way, I really appreciate how those books are written in such an old fashioned way and that they use like proper words. It's like, it's lovely. So yeah, you might be right about that, as if with it being one of the first, if that is the case, one of the first sort of spiritual oriented books, that could be it. It's just that the way of conveying the concepts wasn't quite as practiced at that point, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Like I think we need a little bit more like factual, like science backing these days to like really kind of absorb it. If he's just saying it like I'm a spiritual teacher, it's kind of just like a little bit, strikes me as like a little bit hippie, like, you know what I mean? So I think like modern day books, that's definitely like preferred. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else had some initial thoughts.
Sonali. Sonali wants to say something here.
Oh, sorry, Ileana, you want to go first?
Oh, no, it's okay. You can go.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Khalil. Like I have some strong opinion about the book. Having said that, what I liked about the book is it will help a lot. Like if you have like, it gives a lot of importance, like the whole book is about mental health, if I may say so. And mental health is definitely, people are more aware of that. People are giving a lot of importance to that because it is a real thing right now. Having said that, the biggest problem I kind of faced with the book was the words, sometimes the words were really fancy and I could not wrap my head around that like he could have, like, for example, pain body. Could we have used like better, like simpler words, which were easier to understand, simpler examples? I guess that it was, if I may say, at certain point, like I felt frustrated, but more than frustrating, it was a difficult read for me. It was difficult for me to kind of focus and get through it, because sometimes I know that like last 5 books, I would have this dedicated 45 minutes for my reading and I'll be like, oh, maybe 45 minutes is not enough. Let me spend 15 more minutes and finish like the last 2 pages or things like that. But with this book, I was like, oh, I'm done, 45 minutes. So, we'll get back to it tomorrow, something like that. So I do not completely hate that book. Like there were definitely good things, but it was a difficult read, definitely. Yeah.
I think the ideas are just so abstract, right? It's like in our prior books, there's like fundamentals that you can write down and like memorize and remember. And this one, it's like he's talking about things you can't quantify, but then using words to like quantify them. You know what I mean? So it's definitely like a hard thing to write about. I felt it was a little bit repetitive too. Just across all the chapters, he seemed to be saying the same thing over and over again, which is mindfulness, be in the present moment. Don't live in future and past anxieties, which is all good. And that's super relevant right now, especially like in our digital age where we're distracted by a million things. But I felt like that was spread across 10 chapters when it could have been like, not a blog post, but maybe like a shorter book. So yeah.
I agree with Sonali. Like I would read chapters and like, I don't know what any of this means, or like I wouldn't be able to like summarize it in my own words because it just felt like complete nonsense to me. And then the question would be like, oh, I don't understand this part. And his answer would be like, oh, that's because you're not enlightened enough. You're not on the right vibration level to understand it. And I was like, oh, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help me at all.
I think that's where the book lacked empathy, right? I think a lot of it was telling you how you can get over things and get through things and how you should look at situations. But it really, to me, lacked some empathy. I mean, it had some really valid points, and it really, certain things struck a nerve with me with, things we're probably all dealing with in our own lives in some capacity. But it really, there was a bit of a tone that I almost got out of it, where was that you should be able to control all aspects of things, or your life will be so much better if you can. But it just, I don't know, it kind of talked down to me is sort of how I felt it, as opposed to really helping me get there and get through things. So yeah, I just really think it just lacked that empathy side of things.
To add on to what you just said, Paul, one of the quotes that I kind of pulled from the book was, the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it.
Yes.
There's just so much to unpack there. And when you really dive deep into it, like, yeah, that sounds like a great quote. Sure, I'll take it. But yeah, you're lacking all that empathy, and you're not putting yourself in a lot of people's shoes when you're just saying that, and that's the only solution, right?
There goes the internet.
There he goes.
I agree with
think
him.
yeah, sorry, Leslie, go on.
I had the same quote picked out because that one just irritated me to my soul. Because it's like someone in a domestic abuse situation, what they're just thinking it's a bad situation, or is the situation actually bad?
Right, and it's like, yeah, I can totally agree. Oh, classic.
You're back.
Agreed.
Back in action.
Whatever you just said, agreed.
Because it's
I'm
true.
so sorry,
like,
guys.
Situations like that, it's like the situation is just horrible. So a better mindset, I think, would be, assess the situation for what it truly is, and then decide if you can change it or if you should leave.
I agree with that. It's too simplified. It's ridiculously simplified.
Yeah.
The guy's maybe he's never actually lived through any real pain in his life. It's just too oversimplified. I can tell. I think, Leslie, I don't need to add any more to that. I think your example sums it up perfectly.
I think it's very easy for these types to find that enlightenment too, because they withdraw themselves from society, right? Like they go on top of a mountain and they get away from their responsibilities and things in the real world, and they have the time to really hone in on that. So expecting people who are like living their day-to-day lives with responsibilities and jobs and things like that, we can have little bits and pieces of what he's saying, but we can't have it all, right? Like we can't become completely enlightened sages who are floating on the ground and ride around on clouds. But
like he had one line about which was so it was worse than this one. It was like, you know, your vibrations will like affect the things that happen to you. And he basically said, oh, if you get like, if you're walking around and like a random person stabs you, it's probably because of your vibration. But if you're a nice person, like he said that, there was an example like that where he said, if something bad happens to you, like you'll notice that when your vibrations are good, bad things will not happen to you. But when your vibrations are bad, people will be agitated and they will want to pick a fight with you just for you existing. And I'm like, well, if we're just walking around naked, like hurt by a random stranger, you shouldn't, like he's saying that that's your vibration that's causing it. And I'm like,
I
well,
think
that's like
that's a
such
poor
bad.
example. I can
It
see what
is.
he's saying, like your
But-
vibe attracts your tribe kind of deal. But I don't think getting stabbed is the
But yeah,
That's
like I don't know if it
extreme,
was
like,
stab or
yeah.
a fight, but it was something like that. And it like infuriated me. I'm like, well, okay, like should I be sad that like something bad happened, or should I just blame myself and like be even more miserable that something bad happened?
Mm.
It reminded me of manifesting, that it's something that it's very in trend right now. Making sure, and it goes along with what you said, Khalil. I think I believe some of it, but I also think that that there's, I mean, life is about you growing and understanding different situations. Maybe it's not about, and some of these phrases are more about being aware is the first step. I would think that that would make a big difference. Being aware that complaining doesn't do much for us. However, it is sane to have some time to just vent, and that's normal. Yeah. But then making sure that you're not doing that every day, all the time. I think just being aware of those things and how your mind can really make you or break you, makes you move towards the path where you are growing as a person and saying, oh, I could have done this differently. And just that, I think it's great for your own growth. Just recognizing that maybe your reaction to certain situations could be different next time. And I think just that it's a lot. So yeah, I like that. Just reminding myself with this book that negativity, complaints, how worrying about time will hurt my creativity as well, not only for work, but to create plans for my life. So I feel like this book just allows you to remind yourself some principles. And I agree with you all that and actually I said this, of part of what I found very challenging is some of these things are very intangible. So it makes it very hard. We're all struggling with this. So yeah, but at least being aware, I think that's a great win.
You were just mentioning creativity there, Jackie, and you said about, quietening the mind in order to become more creative, and that I do agree with. If you've got a lot of stuff going on in your head all at once, it's very difficult to focus on one thing and really put your efforts into doing something creative or valuable, So there is truth in that. And I think, as you were saying as well, I think it's quite cathartic sometimes to have a good old vent. But when it becomes a habit, then that's a problem, So
yeah, it prevents you from getting into that flow state, right?
Yeah.
Which is where you enter your creativity.
Yes.
Ileana, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, just like everybody else, I also have very strong opinions about this book, but I wanted to focus on some of the positives to pull out of it. Like, I feel like a lot of people are always, including myself, like you're always kind of stuck in the past, but this book kind of showed that a lot of people are also stuck in the future of like the what ifs and like all that, like thinking about, oh, this is going to happen, that kind of stuff. So I thought that was a really interesting thought that I've never thought about ever. So I was like, oh, like that's really cool. And being able to realize that and realize like if anybody does meditation, it's all about just like being in the moment and like recognizing like, oh, hey, like this is what's happening right now. And although I have more negative things to say than positive about the book, I have found myself going, oh, I'm doing like that future thinking or that past thinking. And so I'm just gonna like kind of reset and like, here we are, I'm living in the moment today. That's kind of what I'm doing. So that's something very positive that I took out of the book. But I would say maybe the first 80 pages were like insightful, but the last like 200 were a repeat and a lot of clutter, like William Zisner would say.
He went to the publisher with an 80-page book, and they were like, "That's not going to work. You need another 200 pages." He's like, "But this is all I got. This is it."
That's it. I think it would be more impactful if it's like one of those 90-minute, be the in charge of your own life kind of book, and just like 80 pages. That's it. I think that would have a better and I feel like they're also like the book is kind of eliminating a certain audience. I know that it uses like certain religious aspects as like metaphors and stuff like that, but I feel like it kind of makes other people maybe not want to read it because they feel like it's not a book for them, if that makes sense. Like it should be focused more on the psychological aspect than just the spiritual aspect. That way you have like a larger audience of people who will want to read this book and benefit from the book.
Yeah. You were just talking about how he was mentioning sort of being in the moment and not future thinking and past thinking. And actually that element that's as we know from talking to Ryan as well, we know that that's good advice. But I'll say when we went through something quite challenging here in our family a couple of years ago, and that was it was like a long drawn out thing, right? And there's a lot to sort of take in those, in a situation like that. And where we decided to go with it was to live in the current moment and not think about what might be coming up. Just deal with the current moment, like deal with that, be present in the moment. And then when the next sort of phase comes about, like we'll call it another phase, and then we'll focus on that phase. And then, and actually there were elements there in this book, I think, that really kind of spoke to my own experience there. And we applied that, not from the book, but we just decided that's how we would go about it. And I think there's a lot of value in that point of view, that philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't spend too much time ruminating when there's something like that comes up, right? Yeah. So you just don't have the bandwidth to be in that future negative. You can only be in the present. So yeah, were there any other standout kind of maybe quotes or positives that you guys took away? I know this is not like a book that maybe many of us are used to reading. Are we into like the kind of spiritual realm, or is it more we've been reading more business and marketing books? I feel like definitely a niche audience kind of gravitates to this kind of book. Is this like something, because we're all at like different stages of our lives too. So is this something that you've gravitated to in the past or in the present? Like, would you read this in the future? Just curious.
I didn't know we were talking about positives, so excuse me. I only like spoke about the negative earlier. So one positive that I really liked was it gave a very clear explanation of what mindfulness really is. Like a lot of we hear that term a lot, but like one day I was just curious. I asked my friend like if she knows the definition for it, and it's something that's thrown around there, but like no one really knows exactly what people mean when they say be more mindful or have some mindfulness. Like it's very vague. But this book, like in the first chapter, it like really painted the picture. It said, this is what you feel. And then I really like the example that he gave in the beginning. Like if one person that like, if you say, I don't like myself, then there's probably two of you. There's the version that doesn't like yourself. And then there's the person that you don't like. And that thought where you're kind of disconnecting yourself from your own thoughts, like that's mindfulness, where you're like the observer of your thoughts. And he gave like a very good example. So I really like that, because like at least for the rest of the book, you knew what mindfulness meant. It's just a shame that he like didn't like bring it up again or call it mindfulness. Like to Sonali's point, the terms used were very difficult, but the examples were pretty good, at least in the beginning. Like to Liana's point, the first few chapters were really, really something that like I was actually enjoying it for the first like few chapters. So
mm-hmm. It gives a good explanation that you are kind of the third party watching your own thoughts. You're not actually your thoughts, because I think a lot of people identify themselves with their thoughts, whether that's positive or negative. And it's if you kind of observe it as the third party and say, hey, like I'm watching my thoughts, maybe I'm not quite my thoughts, you're kind of less attached to the outcomes of those thoughts, which for a lot of us is like negative, right? We live in a state of maybe anxiety or panic, or Ryan Walter was mentioning we have like not a million thoughts, but like a lot of thoughts per day, and like 80% of them are negative.
Yeah.
So if we're constantly living in those thoughts, it's kind of hard to break free and be creative and, you know, grow a business or be in marketing or whatever you choose to do. So yeah, I liked his explanation of that as well. So maybe we'll jump into what we liked, what we didn't like at the end of our book reports. I don't know. We had lists that were pretty long for the what I didn't like, but
yeah, oh, Sonali, you can go.
No, I was just thinking, like, should we talk about, like, because I think we were talking about the likes or dislikes, or maybe we can jump into learnings, or I'm not sure.
Yeah. I guess maybe how you're going to implement this in your day-to-day life, whether that's personal or professional, if there are any takeaways that you want to use.
I might just get back to it again, but like, you know how Vasvi was talking about mindfulness, just because this is being recorded and there would be people who would like, just because, and also this book is a little dated, right? Now, for example, a lot of us follow some like newer books or newer meditation apps, because meditation really helps, and we all kind of gotten into it, and all thanks to Headspace or our personal choice of apps. Like we know things, like we know things a little bit about mindfulness. So I just kind of thought that if you are into meditation, or if you are already into some sort of similar apps, the first few chapters could be helpful, but not be that relevant to you. You know what I'm saying? Like those information are not that unique, if I may say so, because you have an idea by this time in the year 2022 that what you need to do. Of course, that's a great reminder, but you know a lot of things. Yeah, I just wanted to add that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like one of the points he made. It's like he's referencing the Zen masters sneaking up on their students, and he would be able to determine how successful they would be at being a Zen master by how they reacted to him sneaking up on them. So if you were more present, you'd be more aware and you wouldn't get as scared. I just thought that was really cool. There was this other one. A big topic of this book was also the ego and like breaking down the ego. And so I don't know if anybody had any takeaways about that, if they've been thinking about that.
I highlighted the fact that it lives and stays in the past. Like it lives. I hadn't thought about it until I read this book. I think that was based on ego. I think that was my main takeaway. Just remember that it comes from the past, and it can hurt you as well, and make you take bad decisions. So
yeah, I think another thing that he had mentioned is like you're complete and whole now, right? It's not like everybody's chasing this kind of future self of when they're going to be, oh, I'm going to make it, I'm going to feel this sort of way, or when I do this, I'm going to feel this sort of way, when it's really like, I think another emphasis that he had was like our life is only right now in the present moment. There is no future, there is no past. Well, there is a past, there was a past, but it doesn't exist right now. The only thing that exists right now is the present moment, right? So we put in a lot of effort into becoming this person or that person when it's like the baby steps of being in the moment, which I really liked. and that people like to fill voids in their life with alcohol and food and TV and things like that, things that make them not present. They're in another world and they're in another realm. And I think escapism is a good thing at times, as long as it's you're coming back to reality in the present moment from time to time. So I really like that.
The main lessons that I took are, I think number one, remembering that it's always easier to give advice to someone else just because that's not our situation. But definitely a challenge moving forward for me is make sure that I'm also aware of what advice would I give a friend if they were in my situation, and understanding and recognizing those emotions and managing emotions, which is more important because at the end of the day, your actions speak definitely louder than words. And that's also something I kept in here. You may say something, but it doesn't become like real until you are working on it and actually executing. And then being negative about situation with clients will only bring more tension. So I agree that negativity will attract more negativity. So trying to be more objective. And I added here, having faith in our capabilities as a team, being transparent as always, can really make a huge difference. And just focusing on the common goal, which is also something that I remember from the last book. Just let's keep our eyes on our common goal, and without being negative about it. So those were my three things.
Nice.
Yeah. Adding on to Jackie's second point about the negativity, I guess the biggest takeaway for me is, I guess at some point in time, all of us were mentioning living in the moment. You know how he mentioned, don't worry about the problem which is going to happen like in the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes or in like few hours or in the next month. Don't worry about that. Just worry about the problem which is there right now, because sometimes what happens is, I'll go back to our like daily stand-up meetings when we have, and I know like we give this 3 priorities to Jackie, that these 3 are the clients we're going to focus on. And then throughout the day, I'll be like, okay, I'll be working on ABC client, but I'm worried about DEF. And then I have to like kind of like, that is when you have to train your mind, like DEF is actually for tomorrow. So don't worry about DEF right now and just focus on ABC. So that is, I guess, a huge takeaway, because like if I'm not focused, if I'm trying to work on ABC and worried about DEF, I cannot finish any of the work on any of those 6 accounts. So I'd rather be focused on ABC and forget about DEF for the time being. So that is, I guess, I know it's easier said than done, professionally and personally both, but I think we should practice that, because like that has helped me a lot. That's one of the biggest takeaways and learnings for me, for sure. Yeah.
Any learnings, Paul, Roy, Liana?
Yeah, one of the big takeaways that I sort of took from the book was accepting that the pain is there. And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he said, accept that the pain is there. Don't think about it. Don't let the feelings turn into thinking. Don't judge or analyze. So again, it's going back to his being the observer. So you have to acknowledge when something's wrong or there's pain or there's something negative in your life happening, and acknowledging it, analyzing it is fine. But if you live in that pain, it's only going to feed off of itself, and the negativity is going to continue to grow and bring you down and affect those around you. And I mean, that happens in life every day, and it's his point of acknowledging it and then moving away from it and observing it is powerful, because it's the way to try and get out of dark moments and negative things that are happening in your life. You don't want to ignore it, because that's wrong, because then it'll just manifest itself. But you want to kind of rise above it and accept that it's there. And to what Michael had stated earlier, where you compartmentalize things and you live in the now, in the moment, right? Take care of the things you can take care of right now. Don't worry about those next things, or don't worry about the past things. Just focus on what you can handle and deal with now is super important to deal with any kind of, challenges in your life. So I won't go into the whole paragraph that I copied down, but there were some powerful points. As much as I didn't really love the book, or didn't like the book at all, there were some powerful things that I did take away, and that was it. Life's tough, acknowledge it, but if you're present, you can really get as much joy out of life as you can in the moments.
Great. Roy, Ileana, Leslie, any
Yeah,
takeaways?
I agree with like just sort of the base overall, like the overarching theme to live in present, not overthink things, and then don't dwell in the past and don't like have anxiety about the future. Those are all good advice. I don't think I needed to read 200 pages of it to get that point. In fact, actually, I couldn't even finish the book. I had to stop because I think it was making me so upset that it was affecting my mental health. So I got to like inner body. I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Did anyone listen to the audiobook with his soothing voice? Did anyone fall
Yeah.
asleep to his soothing voice?
It was bad. It was so bad.
I had it on 2.5 times speed.
I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out how to make mine speed up.
My goodness,
I don't know. I agreed with the overall theme of everything, definitely. Because like myself personally, I sort of try to live by the rule. Like I let myself wallow in self-pity for only like just a little while. And then it's like, all right, shake it off. And then I either have to, if I can't change it, I have to accept it. I can't just sit there and wallow in self-pity. It's like one of those two things that has to happen. So I don't know. I just thought his way sort of, I feel like he almost makes you blame you if you're not perfect, then you're blaming yourself because you didn't control your mindset enough. And I don't know. I don't need that kind of pressure.
Yeah. It's almost like, why are you not at this stage yet when everybody's going through their own process, right?
Like he
They're
says
all.
don't judge, but he makes me feel judged.
I can see that. Ileana, any takeaways, good quotes?
Yeah. So I think like I'm gonna start with positive and then I'll end with a negative, and then I'll do a compliment sandwich with it. So the first thing I would say is that I really, really do enjoy the like that realization of living in the future, because during this I was thinking about, I'm like, oh yeah, like what should I say? And I'm like, okay, you know what, stop that. So living in the future is really like, I think that was really good out of it. And also about like the kind of like, I'm paraphrasing here, but like the energy that you give off, you're going to get in return. Reminds me about something that my professor said a very long time ago. And she said that if you surround yourself with red lights, eventually you're going to become a red light. But if you surround yourself with green lights, you're going to get that in return as well. So I like her example better because like it's easier to visualize a red light and a green light as good and bad. And like if I had to say like this book in like a little, I guess like in one sentence, it's like it's a good idea but poorly executed, I guess is like the kindest way I can put it. Like it had good ideas, but I don't think that he did it justice in the way that it was. If you can see, like at the beginning, I have like these awesome bits, like dog-eared, which I don't usually do, but this one I just did because I sat down and I read this in one sitting because I didn't want to deal with it again. And then the rest here, I didn't bookmark anything because I didn't think it was good, I suppose. But yeah, that's like some of the thoughts in there. I think that, yeah, that's pretty much what I think about it without being too harsh. Good ideas, bad execution is my summary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed the same thing in my notes. Like my chapter 1 through 4 was like pretty full. And then like as I got on, there were less things to like really write about that was tangibly different from the first 4 chapters. Any departing thoughts on the book? I know this is like kind of an abstract conversation to have, right? It's been different from the other book of the months where we have tangible things to really nail down, but this one is a little bit more out there. So if there are any other additional thoughts or feelings, some big ideas.
I would say my last thing, if we're sort of heading towards the end here, the last thing I would really say is that taking his advice to not live in the future with future thinking is great, but still make sure that you plan. So it's kind of like, it doesn't, not thinking about the future doesn't mean don't think about what you might be doing in the future.
Yeah. It's like visit it from time to time, but don't stay there.
Well, visit it. Like, I like to think about the future. Like I'll think about where I want to be at the end of the year. And I'll think about it in an abstract way. So I'll think about how I feel about the accomplishments that have taken place, how my family will be, and the perception of their world around them that they might have, or something like that, right? I think about that and I kind of drive towards it. But I think that this is where everything, like with his concepts, they are a little too simplified at times. To Ileana's point, they're not very well thought out either. Like the pain body thing, that just sounds like a badly developed concept to me. It's like there are better ways to communicate that, and it was maybe just not really thought through. I don't know, but I think the core message in there is a good one. And I think Roy was saying that, right? Roy didn't need to read the book to kind of realize these things. Some of us, I mean, there were some things that I learned, right? I think at the end of the day, the intention is good, you know? So it's a harmless, helpful book, I think, at the end of the day.
Be team Greenlight and use Headspace. Matthias, any departing thoughts?
There are so many things that I've wanted to say during this whole thing, but I'm terrified that I'm just going to cut and it's going to drop. And but while I'm here, I agree with most of the things you guys have said. My three main things that I took, I kind of separated it into three different quotes. The first one is, all life is a series of present moments. Kind of a cool way of looking at it in a way. Again, not 100% agree with that, because like Michael was saying, we need to plan. We can't just like sit there, be a hermit and not do anything about our lives. Like you have to take action. You have to plan things. It's just another part of life. But I do like kind of like how he worded that. It is kind of, at the end of the day, what life is just the present moment. The second thing, any pain you feel results from resisting the things you can't change. Again, very abstract, very general, like, I don't know, any pain, like just to say any pain, like there's different kinds of pain. But I do think that, yeah, resisting the things you can't change, you're not doing yourself anything by doing that. So making sure that, yeah, you're aware of the things that you can't change and what you can do about it, what you can't, and just kind of let it be, move on, per se. And the third thing that I had was like, observe your mind and don't judge your thoughts. I really like that. We tend to get stuck into these like headspaces and negative thoughts, and, just making sure that you're observing it and just, not judging yourself, not beating yourself down, but, take your time, process it, and then figure out where to go next. I think it's very key. I don't think I cut out during that whole thing. That's You're insane. Woo. Okay. Good.
Golf clap.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
golf clap.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah. Anybody else, or are we gonna maybe wrap it up? Yeah, I think so. So I think next month's book is the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. I really like this one so far, and I think this one is more on track with what we've been doing in the past. It's very short too, so concise, and yeah, I'm enjoying it. So we will be back with this book, the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, by Al Riaz and Jack Trout. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, make a comment, and we'll see you guys next time.